My name is Keith Patterson. I'm the Associate Director of the Teaching with Primary Sources Western Region, and I'll be your host tonight. Along with me is Kyle Claybaugh and Crystal Payne. They will be helping out in the chat room. Please reach out to them if you have any questions or comments. And also just to remember, that's how we'll be doing questions for our presenter tonight. So just put your things in there and we'll help you get your questions to our presenter. Tonight, our two-part program is entitled Teaching Elementary Online with Digital Primary Sources and is being presented by Kelli Taylor, who is a third grade teacher in Boise, Idaho, and who just happened to spend last year in DC as the Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellow at the Library of Congress. The presentation will be in two parts. The first session, Kelli will share quick and easy Library of Congress resources. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Kelli.
Fantastic. Thank you, Keith. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my impromptu office, like many of us have now at home. And I dressed up for you. I got out of my t-shirt today. So thank you for making me dress a little more professionally. It's nice to kind of have that change. All right, I'm just going to go share my screen here. And we're going to get into presentation. There we go. All right, I am so happy to be here and so thrilled that the TPS Western Region is doing this, because the reason many of you are here is the same reason they're offering this, is trying to gather some quick and easy resources that we can use. So I appreciate you attending. We're going to be, going through some things. Please feel free to ask questions. If I'm going through something a little too fast, let me know. Or if you need clarification on anything, that's the best way to make it usable for you. And I really am trying to give you some resources that you can use that are quick and easy. So first, we're going to be talking about utilizing the Library of Congress resources. You may or may not be aware that they're having their own office hours. And so they're doing that typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays Eastern time. So you can look for those and I'll show you where. Also, just want to give you a little bit of background on me. I'm teaching third grade, as Keith mentioned, and I come from teaching practices of hands-on. So this online learning is a little tricky in my book. But the library does have great resources for that. And so I want to show you some of the ways that you can use it in a quick and easy fashion, right? We don't want to recreate the wheel. We don't want to take 2 hours to create a 10-minute lesson. So I hope some of the things that I show you will be useful. So, and again, please reach out as we're going through these. The first thing I'm going to take you to is the Library of Congress teachers page. And so I'm just going to go here. And we'll let that load. I am kind of in rural Idaho, so do understand that my my internet is a little bit slower at times. So we work with all the things we have and go from there. I don't know how many of you have used the Library of Congress webpage before, but I'm going to tell you how I use it from an elementary perspective, because some of these things do tend to gear towards secondary. And so one of my favorite resources is the blog, and I'll just go to the blog page here. And the nice thing about the blog is it really has almost any content area you could be working on teaching. So it's a fantastic resource. You know, if you have some extra time you're trying to kill, you're welcome to scroll through all the different blogs and check those out. But the nice thing is that the blog is searchable. And you can see some of my searches. I did not search for Jim County COVID-19 cases, but there you go. Apparently it thinks I did. So I'm just going to go to science. I have that STEM background that I like to reinforce. And that's one of the things that can really be challenging with online learning, is kind of doing the, the science piece. How do you demonstrate things, those types of things. And when we search at science, we see a variety of options here. And it's a great resource for finding some different topics. Again, the measles, we've talked a lot with the pandemic about the early pandemic back in the early 1900s. And another interesting one is kind of the measles. So that's another great resource if you're looking for something. Me personally, I am always trying to find something that actually takes our mind off of that. So I kind of look for other things. I'm going to narrow down my science, because you can see there's a variety of posts. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see there's at least 16 pages. So not really useful if I'm in a time crunch and wanting to limit how much, what I'm looking for. So I'm going to search instead for forces. In third grade, we teach forces in motion, and do a little bit of that. Oh, and there we go. So we have the current Einstein Fellow, Library of Congress, her blog post on roller coasters, which, again, as we talk about kind of going in and, we all know the situation we're in currently, and sometimes it's nice to get your mind off of it, especially for those elementary kiddos. Reassure them and give them something else to focus on. Now, the nice thing about the blogs, if you kind of scan through this with me, you get a little bit of background of the images here. And the blogs typically only have 1 to 2 images. There may be extra resources you can find, but when you're creating a quick online lesson for elementary students, you really only need, if you haven't used primary sources before, I would start with 1. If you want to do some comparison, this shows the flip-flap ride at Coney Island from different perspectives. So you could use both of these images. And so Amara's done a great job of giving you some background history on these 2 images. And then she talks a little bit about roller coasters and gravitational and kinetic energy, those types of things. So some of this, you could just copy and paste right into a lesson you're creating, the parts that are relevant for you. The other nice thing about most blog posts is that it also provides some questioning activities. So you can see down here some of the questions that you might want to ask. What do they notice? At the Library of Congress, we also use a lot of see, think, and wonder, so the visible thinking routines. And so that's something that you can easily pull in and just post an image and have students comment on what they see, think, and wonder. So I know we're all using a variety of platforms, whether it's Microsoft Office, Google Classroom, various apps. So these images are really easy to simply take and add to a lesson. You can click directly on the image. It'll take you to the original Library of Congress page. And then what you need to do, I always go for the biggest JPEG to get the best quality. So you simply choose that one, go, and then you have the image you can download and save, right? So you can save that from there and then put it into any of the tools you're using to share with students. You could then take the questions that Amara has shared in her blog and kind of use those to guide student thinking. But so in this time when we can't always demonstrate forces in motion, most students have been on some type of amusement park ride. And so this is something they can connect with. And then think about the different forces and types of energy that they're feeling when they're on these types of rides. All right. So that's one of my fun ones that I like, is using that. I want to, let's see. So within one little blog, you can have a whole lesson. That's kind of my point with the blogs. I do like them a lot. And there really is, let's even check math, because that's another one that's kind of interesting. So we'll search that, and thank you for your patience with my internet. We're getting there, and hopefully everybody could see that. So I actually started creating a Seesaw lesson. So I use the Seesaw app, and I will kind of show you how I've created that, started creating that lesson. But I'm going to go into this link as well, because this is a great resource. We had just been going heavy duty into fractions when our school closed. And so the students were getting the idea. We'd done some hands-on pieces. But what I like about this, if it will load, is that, you know, so as you can tell from the title, it's a recipe. And students can not only work with this in a math lesson, but if they choose to, they can actually make the recipe at home. So it connects to Rosa Parks. You can use that information or not. And then if you want the recipe, you can simply click. I'm just going to click that again and have it take me straight there because it's hidden behind another tab. So we can see Rosa Parks' recipe written on an envelope. If we don't use the title from the image, then we can kind of ask them, why do you think the Library of Congress would be holding this manila-style envelope with this writing on it? The other thing I like about this for third grade is that it's in cursive. So that's another thing we kind of missed out on. We just finally got through all our letters. We were starting to write in cursive. They hadn't had a lot of practice reading in cursive. So this, I think, could generate some discussion with students about, oh, it's hard to read, or I can't tell what letter this is, those types of things. And then it'd be great, I wonder if they could identify why there's a capital T and a lowercase t. What might that mean in the recipe? But you can see the fractions we have here. And, you know, one challenge you could give students is, what if you didn't have a half measuring cup? What measuring cup could you use? Or a teaspoon. You don't have a half teaspoon. So how could you work to figure out what a half teaspoon of salt is? So there's all these kind of basic mathematical pieces, but you also have the fun is if they actually wanted to, they could go and share these recipes and try them at home. So hands-on math with their measurement. And that's one thing. I'm not sure how many of you have been communicating. I'm sure you've all been communicating with parents, but you know, one thing I've kind of run into is, you know, our students are doing paper packets as well as online instruction. And that's a real change from what you can do in the classroom. And so I try to encourage parents to think about things with especially like math and cooking. How can you turn it into a hands-on lesson for your students with what you have around the house? So this is a great example. Again, you'll notice that here we have our questions listed for us. So we could post this recipe. We could save some of the information, the background information, and pick and choose based on what we were wanting to target our image for. But you can see again, within these paragraphs, you have almost everything you need for one lesson. Just some great information there. And you can take it as far as you want, or you can keep it as simple as you want, because, you know, we're trying to keep things within a few hours of instruction for students. And, you know, by the time they look at or review certain information and then respond, that can take up some time. But we've got the questions highlighted really easily here in this post. So easy to add that to your instructional piece, whatever platform that might be, and away you go there. I'm going to take you back to the main teachers page now. So just kind of going back through some of my searches and getting you back to the main teacher page. So that was the blog section. So here we have the blog. And if I scroll down, then we have the using primary sources. And so I'm going to click right here on this link. This site has some great questions. Again, you could pull in for any primary source you wanted to use, whether it's one you found in a blog, if you were tooling around somewhere on the Library of Congress website, whatever the case may be. These are some basic questions that you can include in your lesson, ready to go, that help you guide student learning in the online world that we're living in. The other tool I wanted to show you, so this is still on the Using Primary Sources page, is the Teacher's Guide and Analysis tool. And when we go in here, one of the key things I want you to see is the analysis tool for students. So if you are pulling things into another platform, you can go straight to the PDF version, and you can use this for students to actually respond to the image or images that you've chosen to use for a lesson. So they can actually type in this editable PDF and use that to submit their responses. Also down here, you'll see additional information on analyzing different types of primary sources. So you may find things in there that you would like to use, but I'm going to kind of keep it brief here just so that you have an idea of what is available to you. All right. So that was using primary sources. I'm going to go back to the teacher's homepage here. So this is our homepage. Classroom materials is where we're going to go to next. Now, some of these are on the more dated side. This is not something the library necessarily has been updating. There, you will see some new source sets, but it's not it's not something that they've focused on as much recently. It hasn't been quite the emphasis. The blog has a lot of the more current lesson ideas. So the classroom materials, when we go in, you'll see they're a little bit more for secondary, but there are some elementary pieces, and actually some that tie in well to what at least we're learning here in Idaho. So I'm going to click first on primary source sets. And you may have noticed you could do some searching there, so that's an option as well. And these are collections that the library has put together on a particular topic. So as you can look at these, there are not a ton that relate to elementary. Immigration is one that we study. Inventing, so engineering, you've got the inventive Wright brothers. There's some other sources there. And when we click on a source, then you can see they've actually collected numerous primary sources for you that are ready to be used. You can simply go to the links on those primary sources, and then again go through finding the JPEG and downloading the image you're interested in. This has 16 images we can see based on the box in the front. So one thing you can actually do is click on that, and you'll see all the different images. But you can get kind of lost. It's fun if you're doing it on your leisure time. That's great. But you can see that there's quite a few resources. And as an elementary teacher, I rarely like sending them directly to the Library of Congress because, you know, our country has a varied past, and so there are some things on there that would need some more explanation. So rarely do I send them to one of these primary source sets. Rather, it's a tool that I pull from to create my own collection of primary sources, whether it's using, to just pull single images into a platform, or in our next half hour, we'll be talking some about the TPS Teachers Network, and I believe there's also been some webinars on that. So that gives you an option to create your own collection of primary sources. And so if you're interested in that, we'll be talking about that in the second half hour. So I'm going to go back one more. These are our primary source sets. Lesson plans. Now, again, these lesson plans tend to be a little, they were created a few years back. They're not quite as recent, but they are still useful. It's great that they have the grade level to the side, but again, we're kind of looking for elementary. So teaching third grade, the evolution of the book, that one is great. Taking a look at Minerva Mosaic, that's kind of interesting from the art perspective as well as historical. What are the messages being sent there? And then we have migration again. So there's some great topics in here that can apply, but you have to look carefully, and again, be cautious about what you send students to directly. I really advise pulling things for them versus sending them directly. So looking at migration, all the lesson plans have that similar format. They have the overview in the beginning. You have preparation. Now this is designed for classroom settings, so obviously some of this we would have to adjust, but it's nice they've got all the materials and resources listed here. They have a general procedure. Of course, as educators, we adapt everything, so use what you want, and then you may have to adapt no matter what, because we are in an online setting for the most part. And then evaluation, you can get an idea of how to evaluate that. So that is some of our classroom materials. I'm gonna go back to lesson plans. And I wanted to show you one more thing. So we looked at primary source sets and lesson plans. I want to show you the presentation and activities, because this is one I feel if you found something that related to your coursework, you could send students directly to these links. So immigration is an important part of third grade social studies. And so what I like about this one is that you can actually go over to these images and see the different groups, okay? And we have a lot of actually Basque people that have come to Boise. And so I might go to the Italian and see if there's any mention of Basque. But you can see how these have already been curated and put in a format that is accessible to students and everyone, really, teachers, students. And you could send students directly here, but I would definitely preview anything you were going to have students look at directly on the Library of Congress site, because, you know, we're not always kind to each other. And this is one of those where you want to make sure that students are seeing what you want them to see and not anything else. There's also a great one. I'm just going to back here. One of our newer ones is actually on Rosa Parks. So this is a great resource. And again, if you want to build off of that recipe blog, you could then take them in and talk a little bit about why would the Library of Congress save a recipe like that? Why was this person important? And you have this curation of primary sources that are ready to go. So you can see you can also, they have prepared PDF versions of the primary sources. So if that works easier for you and your platform, you are good to go there. I'm going to go back to the teacher's homepage because there is one more thing I want to show you. And I am assuming there are not any questions yet, because I haven't heard anybody interrupting me. So please let me know if you do have questions. And I want to go to the professional development page really quickly and just talk about, here's the mention of office hours. I mentioned that earlier at the start of the half hour or the hour there. Webinars and workshops, again, a lot of those things are put on hold for now. But you can kind of look at PD videos. Some of these are a little dated, but they still have the basic idea of the visual thinking if you're wanting to learn more about See, Think, Wonder and analysis of primary sources. And now I'm going to jump back over to one more thing on my slides here. And I just want to show you, this is a brand new web page by the Library of Congress. So again, for some of those classroom materials, the presentations and activities, if I previewed that and thought it was okay, that would be a link I wouldn't mind sharing directly with students. And this is another link. This is designed for actual interactions by students, families, all of the above. And as you can see, they've got some great resources with learning how to draw from illustrators and things like that, and other things that you can explore, or students can explore rather, with the Library of Congress. One thing I did in my classroom that would still be relevant, you can find talks by children's authors, from the National Book Festival various years, and you can share those with students as well. And then again, here's a reminder about the office hours. So I do use the video clips from the National Book Festival with children's authors. And those are great resources. It's nice because they, the more recent years, you have, authors that the students know and are currently reading. So it's a great way to kind of connect students with that reading piece, which I don't know about you, but I do worry that, that's one thing that might get missed. And so, those are kind of some of the quick and easy resources that I use to develop quick lessons. You can do whole projects out of some of those. If you're looking for a long, year-end project online, you could definitely build off of any of those primary source sets that relate to what you're doing and kind of develop your lessons around those. But sometimes we just need those quick and easy tools that we can use so that we are using, our time wisely and not being as unkind to ourselves, because we can do more any day of the week.
Hey, Kelly, Janice Bernardi had a question. Any lesson suggestions for online kindergarten or first grade primary sources?
Oh, that's a great idea. We have some children's literature in the Library of Congress collection that you could also use. And with that, it'd be great to even just do one page of the book and then ask them again to say, what they see, think, and wonder. You do have to be careful with the children's literature, though, because some of those, again, it was a different age back when some of these not textbooks rather, but literature pieces were written. And so, some of them are rather scary. So again, that's why we have to preview anything that comes from the Library of Congress, because it's not, there's no filter on it per se. It's the way it was. But there's a great book called The Rocket Book. And, the rocket moves throughout different floors of an apartment building. And so one thing you could do, I know we're all struggling with copyrights and things like that. Well, those resources, the copyright has expired. So if you wanted to do a read aloud with the Rocket Book and then, ask students to respond in some way, draw a picture, where do you think the rocket was going next? Or, one of those things, you could just read a couple pages, record your voice with the images and be good to go. Does that help? All right. Another resource, these can also be a little bit more for middle school and high school students, but Kid Citizen is a great interactive. And we are happy to, I think we are, right, Keith? Happy to share this slide deck with you. So if there are any of the links you wanted directly, you can have access to those, but it's a fairly easy URL. And these, you can actually, students, typically they're designed to go through as a class, but they really do walk students through the See, Think, Wonder process and analysis of primary sources. And I know my time is kind of ticking away here, so feel free to reach out to me. My email should hopefully be on the screen. And then these were some of the main web pages that I used. I know the TPS MSU Denver Twitter account is fantastic. They are tweeting things out daily. So there's another great resource for finding things. And then the Library of Congress Learning and Innovation Office also has their own Twitter account, which is the Teaching LC. So there's some resources. And unless there's other questions, Keith, it's back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, there's been some nice banter back and forth, and I think Kyle's been doing a pretty good job answering. There's some back and forth about using the analysis sheets with Google Docs, and so we gave them some tips about transferring things over into a Google Drive format. But
Fantastic.
take a look at that after the fact. You can go back to the chat. But otherwise, yeah, I think we covered everything, sharing some great resources in the chat. And to answer your question, yes, we can grab your slide deck if that's okay and attach it along with the recording. Yeah, just put that right up on YouTube with it. So thanks, Kelly. I also just wanted to stop here for just a second and remind everyone who'd like to get those professional development certificates for hanging out with us today. We will provide a link in the chat. Okay, I should probably post that up here right about now. And basically that link will take you out to a form where we'll just ask you to fill out a brief reflection and a couple of questions about where we can send your certificate, just your email and such. And that can be found at bit.ly/ps teaching online. You follow that through, it'll take you to that form.